Hi, everyone. My name is Maya Brown. Thank you so much for coming. I just wanted to thank everyone for being here, taking the time out of your nights to see this presentation and all these awesome presenters that we have. So I think it's going to be a really great time. Thank you to our presenters and also to Bill Gassman, who's been doing our recording for tonight. So if you know somebody who wants to see this afterwards, we will have this posted on our YouTube page. As someone who's grown up in the Lakes region, it's been great to see the cross collaboration between different businesses, municipalities, and everyone. It's been awesome just to see everything come together and have everyone use all their resources to just put a great event for you guys here tonight. This resource is really close to my heart since I've been grown up here and shared a lot of experiences here with my family. So this is going to be a great time. For some logistics stuff, the restrooms are on here on this left side for you guys. If you could please silence your phones for the event, that would be great. Um, and all the questions, if you could hold them to the end, we'll have a discussion panel for everyone. So if you guys just want to hold them, you can write them down, whatever you need to do. And you guys can ask all the presenters at once so they can kind of have a conversation with you guys. Besides that, these doors and the doors on the other side will lock at 7 p.m. when the library closes. So just make sure you don't go out those doors or it will set off the alarms. So that would be great. But besides that, I'll turn it over to Eric and we can get the program started.
Okay. Well, thank you all. It's a pleasure to be here. Maya already said a few of the things I was going to say, but the room is practically full, and that's exactly what we want. Most of you don't know me. In fact, almost all of you don't know me. I am Eric Sy. I'm executive director of the Lake Winnipesaukee Alliance. I started back in September. It's been a thrill to be here, and just to kick this off, I really want to thank you all for being here. There are some notable names and entities in the room. It's huge because it's going to take a lake, it's going to take a village to address this issue. We're going to hear all about it. Maya already thanked the presenters. I'm going to do the same. Thank you all. This is the A team that you're going to be hearing from, so thank you for that. And I have to thank Maya Brown. I've already thanked Maya's parents. Maya has done a fabulous job, just simply outstanding, from soup to nuts, literally, the refreshments back there. Please help yourselves. In organizing this, in making sure we get critical mass. And so I think a round of applause is in order. So that's the fun stuff. So why do we want to use, do I really need to hold this up? Bill?
Just for the room.
Why do we need to use salt smarter? I'm sure we all have answers to that question, and we're going to learn the why. But really, we are using too much salt on our roads. You're going to hear some shocking stats about the volume of salt we are using in different locations. And why does that matter? Well, salt is incredibly destructive. I don't think I need to tell any of you that in terms of what it does to vehicles, infrastructure, etc. But what it does to water, what it's doing to the lake, what it does to drinking water. You're going to hear about that as well. And what it does to our personal health. If we know nothing else, we know that too much salt in your diet is a bad thing. So, and this, I'm going to show you a stat. This, of course, is the lake, and maybe I should have gotten to that sooner, but you all know this better than I do. And you certainly know that, though this is anonymous, so nobody's implicated here. So don't sweat it. But this is the stat I wanted to point out, and it's kind of hot off the presses. This is based on preliminary analysis, but here's what we know about road salt use in the basin, in the watershed, based on some early data aggregation and analysis that we're conducting through the Alliance. We have seen a threefold increase in the volume of chlorides, the level of chlorides in Lake Winnipesaukee since 1975. So the trend is heading like this. It's heading in the wrong direction, but we're far from a tipping point. So on one hand, that should make us feel good, but it shouldn't make us complacent. Because at some point we will, if we continue this trend, and it's accelerating, it's getting worse, we will hit that tipping point, and we will forever change this resource. So we're here to talk about how do we change that trajectory? What do we need to do? You know, salt has been declared, maybe you've heard this, the acid rain of our time. But unlike acid rain, this isn't something that we need new federal statutes for. We don't need new regulations for necessarily, Ted. What we do need to do is work together. And if we work together, we can solve this problem here and now. And some of you, and you're going to hear from our panelists, are already taking steps, or already making strides to do just that. So we're here to listen and learn about the how of this, what it's going to take from our esteemed group of panelists. And here they are. Starting with Ted Diers. Ted is from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. I think a lot of you know, or at least are familiar with Ted. Ted is a leader on this issue. He has a deep well of knowledge on the road salt issue. Alex Maloney from Capital Well is here to speak about drinking water, salt, chlorides in your drinking water. And Alex has very generously offered to test drinking water samples. I think some of you have brought samples, I hope. So Alex is here to test those for chloride levels. Dan Harris is here from Real Green Services. Dan is all important because Dan is a critical link in the supply chain as a regional business, and he's going to share that perspective with us all, what that looks like in practical terms based on his experience. Chris Theriault, I got the name right. Okay, excellent. He's the Public Works Director. I think I got your title right as well. For Moultonborough, and Moultonborough is really a leader, in my view, in our view, in what's being done to address the issue, to grab data on salt levels that are being applied year over year, storm event by storm event. And then bringing up the rear here, last but certainly not least, is Phill Sexton of WIT Advisors. Phill is going to talk about the way that we can achieve continuous improvement in reducing the use of road salt, in using salt smarter. And he's got the formula, he's got the model, he's got the technology. Some of you know Phill and his work. Phill and I worked closely together in reducing road salt use at Lake George in upstate New York. And it was an amazing run. Phill will have some of the stats of what was achieved at Lake George over the course of about a decade, and the process continues. But we reduced road salt there with Phil's leadership by 50% and more in the basin. And the results are definitive. We're already seeing results in the water that flows into the lake, in the lake proper as well. So the bottom line is this can be done. We're not landing anybody on Mars, right? We're simply using salt smarter. And as Maya said, after our panelists present, we are going to have a panel discussion. Oh, excuse me, though. We're going to have Max Hohen of the CONCOM, the Moultonborough Conservation Commission, precede our panel event. I think that's right. Or after, either way. But Dan will be really bringing up the rear with his comments from the CONCOM's perspective. And then, as Maya said, we will have a Q&A session, a panel discussion. So save your questions unless they're burning. So I'm going to stop here. We got a lot of ground to cover, and I got to say it, you know, a lot of lane miles to treat. So let's get started. Thank you all.
So thank you all for being here and inviting me to be able to talk a little bit about one of my favorite subjects, a salty subject, and we're going to get salty about it probably before the night is done. But it is an honor to be here with you. What I'm going to show you is some slides, some data. I'm going to geek out a little bit, and I hope you'll come with me on that adventure to talk about some data and some science and some of those things, but as well also some politics and some regulation and kind of how we treat this issue, at least from the state perspective. I'm not alone in this. We have staff. Aubrey Volker is our salt reduction coordinator, so we do have someone who's dedicated to this effort. And Steve Landry works in our watershed assistance section. And many of you know Steve. He's done projects to help improve lake quality in so many communities around the state. Maybe you don't know this, is that New Hampshire was the first state to actually start using road salt on its roads as a de-icer on a regular basis in their highway department. That's back 1938. We know that salt use statewide has more than doubled in the last 40 years, and we also know that it is affecting our water bodies. We have an assessment that we do for Congress every 2 years. It's called our 303 D list, fancy title. And we basically look at what waters are not meeting water quality standards. The state has water quality standards for chlorides. Chlorides show up on our list of horrible chemicals for the environment. I call that our table of methyl ethyl death. That is all of the things that are horrible. There's PCBs on there, and chlorides show up on that list next to chlordane. So we treat this as a toxic because it is toxic to fish. And we've seen the number of impairments, and this is just places where we've measured. If we go out and measure, we find it. But in places that we've actually measured and documented scientifically that they don't meet our water quality standards, which that standard in surface waters is 230 parts per million, that we put them on this list. And that has gone, really gone up a lot. And then we've also had water supply wells. We regulate water supply wells to community systems across the state, and the number of those systems that have seen, their contamination, problems in those wells has increased by 150% in the last 30 years. And you're going to hear more about that. This is just, again, I told you I was going to geek out with some data. This is the surface water treatment plant at Canopy Lake. Everybody knows where Canopy Lake is. You've probably been to the Canopy Lake amusement. This is what chlorides look like. This is parts per million. You can see over the last, this is since 1997. This is a pretty darn good database. This is people just like yourselves who monitor their lake. I know we have some lake monitors in the house. Thank you. We get their data, we use it. And this is specific conductance, which is a proxy for chlorides. And this is in our rivers. And we see that since 1990, again, we've had nearly almost a doubling of specific conductance, again, a proxy for chlorides in our rivers. And that's kind of amazing, because this includes, the Androscoggin, the Connecticut, the Merrimack, the Saco, really big watersheds that have a lot of nothing in them. And yet we still see this signature across the board. And it gets back to this idea that we are using an awful lot of salt in the state. I like this slide. This is to set up the folks from Capital Well. We have some data, some interesting data that looked at proximity of a well to a driveway or road or parking lot. And what you see in this is that as you get closer and closer to the road, you see a higher contamination of chlorides. So you can see here, 5 feet, you see that across all the wells that we looked at, you see that curve gets out here to the point where you have, over 750 milligrams per liter of chloride. You would be able to taste that. You can taste it at about 250 parts per million. So again, this is this issue that is really important. Speaking of drinking water wells, the good folks in Merrimack Village District, they know full well the impacts of chlorides because they lost a major production well. How much do you think it costs to replace a 1 million gallon plus well in New Hampshire? Take a guess. Anybody, hazard a guess. Throw out a number. How much do you think it costs? $2 million to to do all the studies, to do all the pump tests, to locate it, to do the engineering, to get the pump in, to do the treatment, all of the things that has to be done on a major production well. This is not a big community. This is a small community that lost a major production well. That's astounding. We're talking a little about how we got into the salt business here in New Hampshire. You're going to hear we've done a lot. And I think you'll hear from Phill and others that have a national perspective that we've got some unique things that we are doing here to try to reduce chlorides. But we got into this with the I-93. Those of you who remember, I-93 from Manchester down to Massachusetts used to be 2 barrels each way, right? Back in the early 2000s, there was a proposal to be able to double that. Why? So that people from Massachusetts could come up here and spend their money at Lake Winnipesaukee and Loon and Sunapee and all of the other places that we wanted that to happen. And so in order to do that, that incorporates bigger on and off ramps. It includes park and rides, it includes more plowing, more salt. And one of the other interesting things was that it changed the drainage. It changed the drainage from being an open drainage where the water just sort of fell off the side of the road into a closed drainage system. You saw the slide about Canopy Lake. One of the things, the problems with changing that drainage is that instead of that salt-laden water slowly sinking into the ground and getting into the lake, now it's got a straight shot. Pretty much goes directly into Canopy Lake and Cobbett's Pond. And you can see the numbers in the lake show up where you see that direct shot. Just as another aside on that, it takes up to a decade or more for that salt water to work its way through the groundwater to get into our surface waters. So the chloride levels you see today in our lakes are a decade-old reflection on the land use in those places in a lot of times. So when you think about that, it took us a long time to get into this mess. It's going to take us a long time to get out. In response to this issue of trying to build the highway, we started doing a voluntary training program because what we learned is that more than 50% of the salt was coming actually from parking lots and private sector, as opposed to the highway itself, which was only like 9 or 10 or 12% of the salt. So we began doing a voluntary program. There may be people in the room here who were part of that original Green Snow Pro program back in 2013. And what we heard from the contractors over and over again who wanted to reduce their salt usage was that they were afraid to. They were afraid to because of slip and fall cases. And it's a real fear. When you go home tonight, Google slip and fall attorneys in New Hampshire. And then see how many pages you have to go through before you get to something that's not a slip and fall attorney in New Hampshire. It will be dozens and dozens and dozens of Google pages. So it's a real fear, and the fear was, I do something different. I put less salt out, even though I know as an applicator, I can do it in a safe manner. I can make people safe without using all that salt. But I'm afraid of being sued. So the New Hampshire legislature created a program that gives some limited liability relief for people who go through the Green Snow Pro program, get certified, pay a fee, report their salt use, get trained, and do all those things. And so that's a model that's now being modeled, a model that's now being copied in a few other states, or trying to be. The big question that we've come up with, for those of you contractors in the room, is does it work? Does it actually provide limited liability relief? The answer is yes. We had a case that finally tested this a few years ago with, anybody know the guys at North Point Landscaping. They do a phenomenal job of record keeping, kept them out of trouble. And basically we had a lawsuit that tested whether or not that limited liability protection that also extends to the property owner was valid in New Hampshire. And it went all the way through the process, and indeed it was upheld by the courts that yes, if you've kept track of what you're supposed to keep track of, you can use this program to reduce your salt usage and get that liability protection at the same time. And so that's been, I think, a great development that we could talk about. You could talk to, if you're a property owner, this should give you, you should want to hire a Green Snow Pro certified landscaper. And if you're a contractor, you should want to do this. You should want to sign up. It helps. And the whole point of the Green Snow Pro program really is about, I think, this normalizing the behavior. I know Eric talked about this. I'm sure Phil's going to talk about this. But the way you get to salt reduction is not a technology issue. It's a culture issue. It's everyone buying into, yes, we have a problem, we can fix it, here's how we fix it. Because it's really not that hard to fix, but it's really hard to change the culture. And so the idea of the Green Snow Pro program was to reduce hurdles to salt reduction, take some of that fear of lawsuit out, incentivize the training. That is, by getting training, you have some carrot in it. It starts to build in accountability. I think probably Phill will talk more about this. But it builds in, I'm going to track my salt use. I'm going to try to know what my calibration of my machine is. Know how much salt is going down. Phill may talk about this as well. There's science out there, some really good research that showed that just calibrating your equipment, you can save 20% of salt. Just because you know how much is coming out the back end. And so as of right now in 2026, we have 735 certified Green Snow Pro, and that goes up. That's been going up every year, and you can see the chart there. We recently passed a municipal Green Snow Pro program, and if you would like your municipality to be part of that, we're happy to help you find out how to do that. We have new rules, and we have at least one community. I think we're up to like 3 or 4 now since I made this slide. And so we have municipalities that are joining in. And it is a little bit different kind of take on the program. It basically certifies your whole crew, and it has more accountability features, kind of like the swim model. That's where we kind of stole it from. So again, a few take-home points. Salt isn't the enemy. We are going to be using salt to protect public safety for a very long time. There aren't that many great alternatives at the scale, but over-salting is the program. We use 30 to 60% more salt than we need to get the public safety result that we want. We also know, I want to just talk about this because people are like, well, what's wrong with a little salt? And salt's measured in parts per billion and parts per million, and we're not even close to the lake. I don't know, what's the concentration today in Lake Winnipesaukee? 30, 40?
Something like that.
Something like that. It's ridiculously low compared to the actual standard. But what we don't know is how does that salt affect other things? That's the current research that's going on around the country, through the snow belt of the whole world. And what they're finding is astounding, is that it changes radically the fundamental basis of the ecology of a water body. It changes how phytoplankton interact with zooplankton. It changes how the pollution, and this is just physics. You take a bunch of salt water and you fill it with a bunch of contaminants and you pour it in, where does that water go in a freshwater system? It sinks, right? That's why freshwater floats on top of salt water. It sinks. And so it's taking the phosphorus, which is your true enemy as a lake, it's taking that phosphorus and shoving it into the worst part of the lake for phosphorus to be in. That's where you get cyanobacteria. We are all the polluters. Every single one of us, we've met the enemy, we are they, that we all have to take this on. And again, this is a problem that can be fixed. And if you take nothing away from wave, sidewalks should not crunch. If it's crunching, there's too much salt. And salt drifts are bad. And I say this in pure honesty, this is the picture from my office at DES. We are not doing a good job as a state. We're not doing a good job in a lot of municipalities and we're not doing a good job in a lot of our private sector. There are glimmers of hope everywhere, and you're going to hear some of those tonight. And with that, I believe I'm turning it over to Alex.
So I'm Alex. I work with Capital Well. So we're based out of Dunbarton, New Hampshire. We have a showroom with our filtration on display in the Hannaford Plaza in Meredith. Here's a few of the services we provide. So anything water and well related we can handle, from water treatment, deepening, pump systems, hydrofracking, no water calls, you name it. So we're going to talk today a little bit about how we use salt in water treatment and how to remove salt from your water. How many people in here are familiar with water softeners or have water softeners in their home? Okay, good amount of you. How many bags of you use more than like 10 bags of salt a year? You say. That's good. So with the water softeners, most of your older softeners are using anywhere from 12 to 15 pounds of salt every time they backwash. So the way softeners work, it's an ion exchange. So as the water's coming through that vessel, the resin is a negative charge with a positive sodium ion. As the water comes through, it seeps things like calcium, magnesium, ferrous iron, manganese, and it says, ooh, I like that more, and grabs onto it. And then when that system needs to backwash, it has to overload that resin with sodium. So it's charging that up, recharging those ions, and discharging everything else to drain. So with your older softeners, anytime it's backwashing that entire vessel. With the newer softeners, they have what's called proportionate brining. And that's basically what you see here. How much soap would you use to wash one pair of socks? So when you program that system based on your water quality, it's going to give you a capacity. Say that's 2,000 gallons. Well, when that's scheduled to backwash every 12 to 14 days, if you still have 800 gallons left, it doesn't need to backwash that whole media bed. So it's only going to pull in enough sodium to recharge the media that's been used. Same with the rinse in your water usage. So it's taking that capacity into account, and it's using less water to regenerate, versus your older softeners anywhere from 80 to 100 gallons of water. Versus the newer ones, if you're not using that full capacity, you might use 50 to 60 gallons. As far as the testing we're going to do tonight, this is the list of contaminants that we can test on site. So we're going to test your pH, your iron, whether it's particulate or dissolved in the water, manganese, hardness, and total dissolved solids. The total dissolved solids is going to indicate the level of sodium and chlorides. It's not going to give you an exact number, but it'll at least give you an idea of if that's elevated. And then you can always follow it up with a lab test to get a good rundown of contaminants. So the lab testing we offer, and here's a lab test from Moultonborough, and you can see here the chlorides are significantly higher than the limit. So these are the lists of contaminants you get on a lab test: sodium, chloride, fluoride, iron, arsenic, lead, manganese, uranium, hardness, nitrates, pH, radon, and then your bacteria. As far as having chloride at this level in your well water, 1,300, that's extreme. That's going to cause corrosion. It's going to slowly eat away at all your plumbing, your fixtures, all your heat systems. The only way to remove that chloride is with reverse osmosis. And there's two different options. You have your whole house system here. This is your RO system. You still have to pre-treat the water. If you have high iron, high manganese, hardness, that'll gum up the membrane of the RO, and it'll make it less effective. So you have to pre-treat the water, then it comes into the RO system, comes into these atmospheric storage tanks, it's boosted out from here, then you have your post-UV light, just because anytime water sits stagnant in storage like this, it's susceptible to bacteria growth, and then it's boosted out to the house. And then we have a point of use system, which can be mounted right in the cabinet below your kitchen sink. We can remotely install them in your basement. And it has its own designated faucet, and that removes like 77 different contaminants from your water. So it's like having an insurance policy on your drinking water. It's not just removing sodium and chlorides, arsenic, uranium, any carcinogens or something health concerning in your water, that system will remove it. And it's very cost effective for the point of use versus the whole house system, as you can see, is pretty elaborate and it's a big expense. And it's the only way to mitigate that sodium and chloride. And then if you guys want to set up a time, so we do free consultations where we come out, we'll look over the entire system and kind of make recommendations from there as far as pump systems. You know, we'll look at any aged water softeners. One of the common misconceptions that we run into is we'll meet with people and they say, oh yeah, I have high iron, I was told I need a water softener. That's not always the case. There's a lot of other medias that you can use that will remove different contaminants like iron, manganese, things like that. So to cut down on salt usage, I would definitely recommend having your water tested regularly and then seeking out somebody that can give you proper diagnosis of the best system to suit your water quality. That's pretty much all I got. So you can scan the QR code here, it has all my contact information, and then you guys can feel free to reach out. We can set something up, schedule a water test, and go from there.
Hey there, everyone. Diers here. I want to start off with saying I'm very good at this kind of stuff. So, I want to thank everybody for the Winnipesaukee Alliance. It's pretty cool to have an opportunity to jump into something and have some people that actually think you know something in your industry where you know there's plenty of time when you question you know what you're doing, especially in a season like this, that if you're a New Hampshire resident or an East Coast resident, you know that salt is kind of limited this year. So the timing of this, I think, is kind of really, it really is. So I want to thank everybody, part of, if you're part of that Winnipesaukee Alliance group, especially Maya, kind of holding my hand and helping me with these slides and whatnot. And to her point about her parents being here and being local, you know, she was in and around my house growing up. She's friends with one of my daughters, so it's pretty neat. It's those little things that mean a lot. My slides are pretty simple. I really didn't want to get real wordy on analytics and metrics. There's plenty of that going on, and way more smarter people in the room than me, that even find people what they know. But I guess from a practical standpoint, can everybody hear me?
No,
All right, is that better?
Yeah.
All right, from a practical standpoint, I would say that that we're in a situation right now. I feel that it's a critical point, as everybody has been talking about, that we need to make some changes. There's no doubt. And I got into the winter type business that we all are as contractors do, kind of like everybody else. My entry was get into a plow truck, have a plow route, and try and go out and move some snow around. But the industry has changed so much since I actually was in a plow truck and moving snow around. I took a little bit of a different path and thought I would sell some winter material to local people after using it and realizing that, well, geez, maybe I'll just try this. And it was a leap of faith one year that I gave up a plow route and just kept my route of doing treatments in local parking lots and driveways. Fortunately, we had a winter that it was okay to do that, but the following winter we really didn't have much winter at all. So there was some ups and downs in my path to get to a point where I'm supplying some material to a local group of amazing contractors that have helped build my business, and it's it's been a ride. It's been really, really cool to watch some local people grow their business and really take the time and care about how things are going. And we're all in it together. This year was a real test for everyone. And I think there is not a person in the room that is a contractor that this was the best year to have a reset and learn how to sprinkle salt a little bit lighter, every one of us, when we knew that it wasn't plentiful like it normally is. So I don't want to go on. I don't have much time. If you know me, I can talk really a lot. So I'll try and I don't have bullet points of what I really want to talk about. It's kind of, if you also know me, I just kind of wing it, and then it's what we're going to do right now. So can I just get, I think this is real, I know everybody does this. I just want to show hands of people that are in this room that are homeowners, landowners, lake owner, property owners in this room. Can I just show hands of that, those people? Right. I'm talking to you, really, because I'm not really talking to the contractors. They've heard me. They know I'm not, you know, I only have so much to say. So I'm going to be talking really specifically to the homeowner. So let's go right on to a good start here. So, you know, when we talk about roads and quality of roads, this is really what the average homeowner thinks of immediately after a snowstorm. This is what they want. They want pavement that might be just a little bit wet so they can still do the speed limit, or 10 to 50 miles an hour over, and they just want to go. And the reality is not necessarily this. It can be really, really hard. We're in a rural part of New Hampshire where we have obviously a lot of residential people that have homes in very tough spots, house lots that probably no one ever thought would be built on. They are now built on, and the driveways that service these places are there. There's people out there, contractors out there, that won't even take some of these driveways on, and these homeowners are known, and they know they have to pay a lot of money to have their driveway taken care of. There's some pretty bad driveways out there. So this picture I took this winter, that is a dump trailer behind a pickup truck with a tailgate spreader on it. I couldn't tell if there was two people in the truck. I didn't know if there was a driver and a shoveler into the back of that as it was going wherever it was done, but I thought it was pretty, I had never seen anything like that. Maybe someone knows who that is, but it was a great idea. And as a supplier of winter material, we have seen some things that come in to be loaded like this, and you have to be patient, you have to be kind, you have to educate people when this stuff rolls in, because everybody starts out as a contractor somewhere. You start off with literally, some of us have nothing. It's just you're a small fish in a big sea. And this guy, you know, he's happy to be in business, and he's obviously was working hard that day, and you know, he may get some 20 looks from the big boys and the real equipment going down the road, but you know, my hat goes off to someone who starts like this. I think talking about salt, this picture is up here. I'm a huge fan of cab over tractor trailer trucks, and this came in the yard one day to dump a load, and you know, it's a beautiful truck. It's called a frameless dump trailer. The first time one of these ever came in my yard, I yelled to the driver because I thought he was literally, something was going wrong, and he laughed and he said, no, it's supposed to dump like that. So that's a typical scene in the state of New Hampshire, whether you're at a town garage, DOT garage, or a private contractor who's getting salt. So when you see that type of body truck going down the road in the wintertime going somewhere, that's typically what it's hauling, is a load of salt. And once you plug in to see what that looks like, it'll blow your mind at just how many of those are going up and down the interstates in the state of New Hampshire, around the clock, from October through April. I think that, you know, one of the biggest things is operating as a supplier. My biggest problem has been space, and you know, I have a piece of property that was really never designed to do what I have done on it, We've made some changes, but I think that's one of the biggest hurdles, even as a contractor, is finding the space to hold material, not just salt, because space for a contractor is very, very important. You need it in the summertime for certain things, mulch, loam, compost, and in the winter, you know, you might need a material. So I think it's very important to have proper storage. You know, this is a new little building that we built for some material, and it is definitely an improvement. The visibility is better. It's definitely an improvement. Taking that load of salt and treating it with you know, some type of a liquid that will enhance the salt, make it work at lower temperatures. You know, salt has a very you know, unique way of melting things. It does a great job at that, but there's also ways to improve it. There's lots of ways to make it do other things, but as Phill mentioned this week when I was talking, he says salt is not, it's really still the best way to melt snow and ice, and you just got to know when you add something to it, you've got to know what you have in the arsenal. This happened to be, this was in Bristol. This is a local guy, rotor operator, and this is typical. Well, what happens is a load of salt is dropped, typically, hopefully, on an impervious surface, on like pavement, and you spray it with a certain amount of gallons, really whatever the salt will accept. You know, dry salt is key. So that's another thing that a contractor battles is getting dry salt. Most of the salt comes from the coast where we are, and Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Newington, Massachusetts. When we're getting snow, typically, not necessarily this year, but when we're getting snow, they're getting rain down there, and they tarp these piles with these companies that are in businesses. All they do is tarp salt piles, and that's great. The salt that's at the bottom of that pile, still the rain hits the salt, and it just pulls it all in. So when we have winters where there's a lot of rainfall, that salt is saturated and it comes to us, and when sometimes it's dumped, it's not pretty. And when you have salt that's wet, it's already started its process of what is supposed to happen. It's absorbed water, and it wants to do something. It's got to find something. If not, it gets cold, it's going to freeze solid. Salt it's a disaster when it freezes solid, especially in your spreader. Contractor in here, it's happened to everybody. It's the most miserable thing when you go to hit a switch with a cup of coffee in the morning and you think you're just gonna go have a quick little root to sprout some salt, and you're not. And you're in the shop and you're chiseling and smashing and swearing. So when salt comes and it's dry, it's a good thing. When it comes and it's wet, it's not a good thing, because then it doesn't accept any liquid that you have decided to spray on your salt. It does not accept it properly. You don't get the amount of gallons on there properly, and it's just not going to work. It's not going to be as effective. So quality salt, dry salt, you know, good pavement to mix on, whatever you're putting on it, and then a quality storage area to put it in. Those are some things that are very important to the business of moving some white material. You know, some of a practical salt reduction approach, you know, this is Brian. This is a contractor over in Hanover. He bought a large brine making unit and wanted to add some liquid de-icer to it. That's a very common practice at a certain rate, 5%, 10%, 20%, whatever your percentage is. You're typically not over 20% to enhance that brine. Again, you're looking for a bigger window of melting capacity, and I'm trying to keep this as very simple as I can. You're just looking to get a product that you can typically pre-treat with prior to a snowstorm. Think of spraying Pam on a frying pan before you cook anything. That's what you're trying to do with any of these products, is get it down before the storm. So you're reducing that bond that is happening between the snow, the ice, whatever, to the pavement. Now, obviously, temperatures play a major factor in that, but this is a contractor who, you know, I think we did a couple deliveries to him, and he found that, unfortunately, he kind of fell back to more of a treated salt or just a straight salt. Brine in itself in the state of New Hampshire, you know, there's a lot of contractors who have found it to be very, very beneficial. However, it is a tool like anything else, and adding a brine product to your program can be a great idea, but there's a lot of factors that go into that too. Pavement quality, timing of applications, the type of storm it is. There's a lot. You have to have someone on board or multiple people that really care, that buy in. Someone mentioned earlier about you. It's got to be a team effort. You have to understand what the goal is, and that is to reduce chloride use. Well, if you're adding another chloride, a treated product to another chloride, you're two chlorides. So there's some serious science behind it all. So it's not just get some brine and go spray it, because stuff can go sideways real fast, especially if you have slopes. That picture, that's just a picture. That is my shop, and in fact, this shed roof overhang actually collapsed today. Not from the side, but it actually fell over here. The truck that was under there, there's no material in there, just a truck, and it was fine. It was saved. But it was very comical for that to happen on a day like today when I'm supposed to be talking about proper storage. So, full disclosure, I'm letting you know that crap happens to, even people like me. This was 2016. Chris Conway, the former employee here, and still talks to me. He actually bought me a coffee tonight. So this was all, hey, we got to get into brine, and here we go. Chris and I built this unit. This is some old tanks. There's a company called Turbo Turf. We built it off there. John Ludwig Toolride helped us with it. It was everything was spec, but it was backyard. This is basically that guy with the spreader in the back of his trailer. This is more or less like that. But we just wanted to mess around, so we bought some equipment, we got into it, and we more or less got out of it as fast as we got into it. Not because it didn't work. I would say 10 years ago, we just weren't where we are right now. The contractors that are in this room, if you're a homeowner, I want you to know that. The contractors that are in this room, if they're here, they care. They want to do the best thing for their customer, for themselves, their equipment, and this it has its place, and we're gonna be circling back to it. There's no doubt. So I learned a lot. We had this vehicle. This is Dartmouth. This was up at Dartmouth Hitchcock. They've been a customer of mine since 2023, and an amazing customer. And from 3 different foremen there that I work with. In 1 year, they went all in, and they got fully outfitted, and they have some hilarious stories about this. There's nozzles right here that spray sideways, and it's on its own switch. And it was like the second time this truck went out. It was a doctor walking through the parking lot, and the guy driving the truck, he made the corner and hit all 3 switches and just pasted us. Doctor with brine in the de-icer, and he just didn't do they really got a hold of it up there. They did a great job with it. They were kind of like way ahead of their the curve, I would say too. This is Hannaford's in Meredith. In fact, Bill Dogan takes care of that. Bill is a contractor. And, this was Chris and I don't know if you remember this, Chris. I really don't remember this moment, probably because we were sleep deprived. But, we were messing around. This wasn't even being charged. We were even, I believe another contractor was doing it. We were just messing around. And that's kind of what we did. We messed around, and there's really not much to talk about, the actual, I'm not going to get into the actual application rates or anything, but that is it. That's a pencil tip on a boom. Mark Stevens, you might actually own the boom now, I believe.
Still have that boom.
We kind of just got out of it all and just, sent everything down the road. But that's the look, and everybody in the room, I'm sure, knows what it looks like. When you're treating salt, trying to, put a liquid on a product, this is as simple as it is. It's you take salt, and you spray it, and you mix it, and this was this winter. This was right in the middle of when every contractor in this room knows it was you had no life every day. I don't know what week this was. We were completely smoked. The guy spraying there's another former employee, and that day not only did he truck for me, he sprayed for me, and he also ran a loader and mixed. And that's when you realize you have amazing people in your sphere, and you know, we're all in it together. And it was a really cool moment to work, you know, beside him that day. It was comical. This is his dad. You're a contractor. Most of you guys all know who these two characters are. Here's another beautiful picture. This is Chris Conway. This is probably 2016, 17. This is another guy, another local contractor, Brandon Mitchell, holding tarps to get material in the back. This is all wrong. Nothing here is right. There's nothing, and it was moments like this when this guy would pull in, Chris might look at me, and I'm just like, just do it, just load him, you know, and then, yeah, I'm sure he does. And then we're sitting here scraping up stuff off, and I mean, the sander's falling off, and I mean, it's all wrong. It's all wrong. So I guess, you know, having the right equipment, having qualified employees that are educated, that understand the process, the Green Snow program, I can't say enough about it. I was part of it in the beginning. We hosted classes at our shop. Maybe some people here were part of that, and I can't recommend that enough. In fact, it's a great fit for the state. I think it's going to do some amazing things. Liquids are delivered in the wintertime, whatever it might be, in tankers, just like that. You know, all, you know, whether it's daytime, nighttime. You know, it's typically, you know, 4,000 to 6,000 gallons come in a tanker, pumped off, and then that is what is sprayed on a salt pile. You know, once a salt is treated, it takes on a different color. Whatever color the liquid is that's being sprayed, green, blue, brown, pink, there's all kinds of colors. And really those are just dyes, that's all that is. And then your additive is some type of a chloride that is again being sprayed on another chloride, sodium chloride. You know, this picture on the far right, you know, we think about salt, we think about how, you know, how we're going to get away from it. That was another thing you said, Phil, we're probably ever going to get away from it. There's nothing out there that really is going to replace it necessarily. You know, sand, salt, which is what is being dumped, or sand on the right, was kind of in this area, that was the go-to for years and years and years. And I mean, actually, you know, spreaders in the back of trucks, I mean, that's got a, you know, 35 years ago, maybe. I don't know. Does anybody have any idea when the first spreaders were around the area? 35 years, maybe? I don't know, 40 years ago? And now they're in every pickup truck that you see around. Everybody's got a spreader in their truck. And I think that, you know, even a sand salt topic, that is a topic in itself. It's really not necessarily any better. So what it comes down to is people. Specifically, I'm going to target the people around here that these contractors are plowing for, potentially high-end customers specifically. The amount of Amazon packages that come to these people, they need to build little houses at the top of their driveway. Just to put all that crap there, so it's not, you know, a phone call or a text to the contractor, I'm getting packages delivered today, or we have to think a little bit more, just so people will slow down just a moment. You know, it is winter. You know, it is slippery, and you got to actually kind of think. And the problem is, what's driving a lot of the misuse or overuse, it's not the contractor always. It really isn't. A lot of the time around here, it is the homeowner or the customer that owns the parking lot that wants more, because they think as soon as it goes down, it's supposed to evaporate everything. It's not how it works. It's just not how it works. More is not better, and you know, second, third, fourth applications are not better either. It's understanding the product, how it works, and being patient, and driving like it's winter, and bringing proper footwear to work, and not just, we all know. Hopefully I'm getting close. So I guess I'll close with, this is my youngest daughter of 3, Addison. This was I don't know, this was a while ago. She's 14 now. This was the look. Dad, I'm done. We need to go home. And you all seen that in your child, I'm sure. At the end of the day, we use that term a lot, but at the end of the day, every one of these contractors has a family. And I guarantee there's way more things they'd rather be doing than being out at all hours of the day, slinging salt, sand, whatever it is, and plowing. It is a season to get through. They are paid to do this. You know, there is money involved, but it's extremely expensive. The equipment that these guys are buying now, it's absolutely insane. The insurance that they have to carry. So I guess, you know, it's known to be one of the most thankless jobs, for sure. You know, no one's running out of their house offering you coffee and donuts. You might have one customer in your entire route. I had one guy. And I guess, you know, if all our customers understood that we had a life and what we have waiting at home for us, they might be a little more understanding and not worry about that second or third application that they have to get put on their driveway so they can get a dryer or a washer delivered in a friggin' blizzard. So I'm being very honest right now, and that's who I am and what I am. I just want you to know that there isn't a contractor here in this room that is not doing the best of their ability, and they all want to do better. And the way the industry is going in our area, the cost of the equipment, the cost of the products, they have to be doing the right thing. They have to be, because you can't do this cheap and you can't mess around. There's just too much involved now. It's not just plowing snow anymore. So that's it. I appreciate you listening to me and being patient with me, and again, thank you for letting me be a part of this.
I'm Chris Theriault, I'm the Public Works Director here in Moultonborough, and we're going to talk a little about the process that we do here, balancing winter safety and environmental stewardship, at least our targets for that. Moultonborough challenge overall. Moultonborough faces unique winter road management challenges as a lakeside community. Our #1 goal for Public Works is public safety, making sure our town roads are clear, safe roads for the residents and emergency vehicles year-round. We also look at lake protection and preserving the water quality in Lake Winnipesaukee and our local streams and ponds. And like was mentioned before, well water quality as well, protecting the drinking water sources for private wells throughout town. How road salt works, more science for you guys. Road salt, sodium chloride, basically lowers the freezing point of water. The effective temperature range of regular salt works best above 15 degrees. Pre-treated salt, like Dan had spoke about, extends the performance in extreme cold temperatures. Basically lowers that freezing point. The purpose is to break the bond between the snow and ice to the pavement, preventing the formation of hardpack, which enables us to then mechanically remove the snow from the roadways. Any residual salt left over after the storms are complete is left in place. Usually it's in that brine formation at that point, but it's left there for some protection for subsequent snow events. Best management practices for us, for Moultonborough Public Works. We have fully enclosed storage sheds that are located on concrete pads at our facility, which are also surrounded by pavement, which prevents the leaching into the ground and into the groundwater. All our rock salt, our winter sand, and our winter stone are stored under cover at our facility. We take deliveries, as I think the last in Dan's slides there, 18-wheel trucks, 18-wheelers from regional facilities, like you had mentioned, Portsmouth, we have Portland as well, and Newington sources. And then when we are loading out, we have direct shed to truck loading, which minimizes our handling on our facility in front of our sheds. For post-storm management, again, I mentioned residual salt left on the roads provides pre-treatment for the next event, which is helpful, hopefully to help break down that bond between the ice and the pavement during subsequent events, allowing us to use less material overall. At the end of the season, we sweep all our roads, all our paved roads, which does a great job in removing the residual sand, the winter sand and salt from our paved roads to keep it out of our stormwater systems and off our roadside ditches and closed drainage systems as well. We have application strategies that we use annually. We calibrate all our equipment annually, all the spreaders, to try to get a target application rate of about 200 to 300 pounds per lane mile. This is a target. Obviously, with our winter weather here that we've had in the past 10 years, it's been very wet. So our drivers also have adjustability within their cabs to be able to increase their spreading capacity as they're maneuvering their routes. We also look at road temperatures. We have what's called the road watch system in 3 of our vehicles, where we can monitor the surface temperature of the pavement as well as the air temperature in different parts of the community. Those of you who live here in Moultonborough know that one end of town to the other, there's a whole different ecosystem weather-wise, whether you're down on the island or up along Red Hill or on the other side by Swissvale. So we're often trying to look at the temperatures and adjust our plowing applications accordingly. Treatment types by condition. Typically, again, our targets, when we have a light snow event, we try to get our reduced rates down to about 200 pounds per lane mile. And then when we're talking about our freezing rain events or even wet snow, we're probably we're looking closer up to the 300 pound and even above that per lane mile. Temperature also plays a huge effect, where again I mentioned if our temperatures are down below 15 degrees, we try to get into some pre-treated salt applications, or in many cases minimal salt applications. Adapting to changing conditions. Climate trends affecting winter operations. 20 to 25 years ago, we had a lot of temperatures that were more in the cold 15-degree range and below, where we had more cold, dry snow events. And we were able to predict these snow events a little bit better for treatment. Today, and in the last 10 years, we've had a lot of more mixed precipitation events and wet, heavy snow events. Also, like we're going through right now, frequent freeze-thaw cycles. So what does that mean? What are those implications? More salt is required. Wet snow and ice require more treatment than dry snow. More frequent applications as well. Mixed events mean more treatment cycles. Less predictable timing. It's harder to plan pre-treatment strategies. We talked a little bit about brine and may touch on it a little bit later as well. And it's harder to reduce the usage overall. While conditions demand more salt, our environmental concerns still remain. Here in Moultonborough, we have private contractors. Some of you guys in here, and great, I'm glad to see you guys came, it's excellent. We are responsible for plowing our private roads or emergency lanes. Our contractors are paid by the hour to do that. We control the amount of sand and the materials coming out of our facility. So they come in, they load, we load them. We try to track every truckload of material going out, whether it be the winter sand that most of the contractors use because it's all mostly gravel roads, but also all our salt that goes out of our facility. We have 2 contractors that use salt or pre-treated salt, and primarily for the school bus routes that they have on their routes. For their private operations, and now I'm talking about town control and how we can control the materials compared to the private operations. For the private operations that these contractors do, Dan talked about it a little bit better. They deal with private driveways, commercial parking lots, private roads. They supply their own materials for their private clients, and there's no municipal oversight of those application rates. tracking and continuous improvement. What are we doing as a community, as a department, to try to get a better handle on this and make data-driven decisions? The things that we track are salt usage by storm event, total seasonal snowfall in inches, the number of storm events that we have throughout the year, and what type of precipitation those are, whether it's dry snow, wet snow, freezing rain. And then we also track, we have de-icing logs to track individual loads of material into the sanders. So we monitor and we track all that information. How do we use that data? We're able to identify trends and patterns throughout the seasons and throughout the years, and we try to make adjustments and application strategies to plan for what we have coming depending on that weather event. Interesting enough, several years ago, we asked the DOT for this area to provide us with their material usage in the same District 3 area that we're in, and they had very similar trends to what we are doing as a department, which was pretty interesting and cool to see. The other thing we do, so we're able to monitor the contractor usage on our emergency lanes, and then most importantly for the residents of any community, planning, material, procurement, and those dollars in our budgets. What we found is our multi-year tracking shows consistent correlation between snowfall, storm events, and salt usage. So this here is an example of a de-icing log that we use. We have this sheet in our loader and our backhoe. So our goal is to have every load that gets loaded, whether it's into our municipal vehicles or a contractor vehicle, gets recorded. And we tally the amount of loads that go out. We know how much a bucket of the loader material weighs, and we know how much a bucket of the backhoe material weighs. So we can calculate all that and the total tonnage that we have for each storm event, which is helpful for doing some of our tracking. And then we produce, with all the data that we collect, a storm report. Based on that last slide you had, all that information gets popped into a report like this. We track when the number of storm, the date, when the storm started, when it finished, what type of precipitation it was, the temperatures, the high and the low, visibility, the type of application we did during that storm event, whether it's salt, whether it's just plowing, or whether we used sand or treated salt, or also winter stone in some applications for especially freezing rain. We're able to monitor and track all of our staff and the amount of hours that they put into the storm, as well as all of our equipment and those rates of what we use for each storm event. And at the bottom here, we also track all our contractors who are doing emergency lane work with the amount of vehicle hours that they have to cover all of their routes. So with all this data that we collect, we're able to, and then incorporating everybody's labor time, materials that we use total, and equipment time. This particular storm, you can see up there, was almost a $40,000 storm event. We also track year-to-date information so we can see how we're doing with our budget. At this point, in this last winter season, we were at already expended $96,000 on our contractor services for our emergency lanes. So it's all important information that we look at, try to manage our budget, but also manage each of these storm events we have to keep our roads safe. This is historical tracking of our winter salt usage versus our storm events for the past 14, 15 years. What's interesting, so this is showing the total number of storms that we have each year in blue, the total inches of snow that we've actually gotten in red, And then the green line is depicting of the amount of salt that we purchased for that year to handle these storms. Interesting enough, if you look back, I look back at the past 10 years, so back to 2016 and 17 up until this year, 71% of the storm events we've had have been wet and or freezing rain events. So it kind of shows where we're at with our weather patterns here. This year, luckily, we've had a little bit better with colder weather, but it's still an impact to what we're looking at overall. And when I talk about meeting with the state and seeing their graph, this exact graph, almost line for line, is what we got from the DOT, which was pretty cool to see. The balancing act that we have as a department and as a community, safety first is our #1 goal. Keeping the roads clear for emergency response and public travel, but also keeping in mind we have environmental care for protecting the lakes, streams, and wells and the ecosystem overall. How do we target and how do we continue to work towards those goals? It's through smart management, which is utilizing the data and the tracking that we do, training our staff overall, and calibrating our equipment to try to get a good handle on what's going on for each of these storm events.
Okay.
Good? All right. And a few of you I do know in the room here still, and I'll sort of speak to the history here in a minute, but just a little background, maybe just to add a bit of credibility of perhaps why I'm here. Most of my career, I've worked as a private contractor, played in both municipal and sort of the parking lot scenario. So that's an over 30-year career in that. And it really started with, in 1989, I got bit by the bug in a 3-foot snowstorm in Utica, New York, of all places. I grew up in central New York in the snow belt or the lake effect belt. And everybody thinks about Buffalo and Rochester and Syracuse. Where we got 200 inches of snow here, just nobody talked about it because we didn't have enough people to make it interesting, right? But that's when I got bit by the bug, and this salt thing wasn't really a thing then. So hard pack was still an acceptable level of service, right? So people still had chains going on and closing roads and things like that. So we've evolved from white hard pack roads to black and wet to, as Ted spoke earlier, now we expect the crunch for some reason, right? And so that crunch though is the waste. So where that's evolved though is I went from a one-man band operation working for another contractor to I started my own little firm, went to college a few times, did that while I was going to school, ended up in the mid-Atlantic, which is interesting what Chris was talking about because a lot of the weather that we were fighting in the mid-Atlantic, a lot of ice storms, rainstorms, whatever. 25 years later, we're receiving the same weather pattern now that we had 25 years ago there. And that was predicted 25 years ago. I remember reading a report about it, and by golly, it actually happened, right? So it's ironic that with warmer temperatures, climate change, global warming, whatever you want to call it, it actually requires more salt now. So as the temperatures are warming, it doesn't seem like that makes sense, but it means we're actually applying more frequently because of those types of weather patterns. So I evolved in my career into, I ended up at one point running the largest private snow operation in the country. There's 102 locations, and I was the guy that was in charge of not only trying to do that consistently, but I was buying millions of dollars of salt. I was buying barges of salt. So if anybody knows what a barge of salt looks like, there's about 50 to 55,000 tons of that on there. I was buying several barges of salt a year just to service our parking lots. And by the way, we were selling at time and material. So the more you apply, the more you charge, right? And so some of that's still going on. after I left that business, I started this business, WIT, whatever it takes. Somebody asked me earlier what that means. It means whatever it takes. But where we are now in our business is we developed a program called the Sustainable Winter Management Program. It's a set of standards that we actually followed in the Lake George story that we'll talk a little bit about here at the end as part of our success. But really with a couple of missions here, but really not only protecting our water, but protecting our future, right? And I think as a contractor, I think about this as protecting the future of your business too. So this salt reduction thing, from my experience, both as a contractor and now as a person and as a team of people that we're trying to enable a better way of practicing that doesn't necessarily require as much salt. So it's more about the sustainability of our business. And I think I'm familiar with some of the contractors in the room, and this is a differentiator for us as service providers. So, you know, we're competing a lot of times with each other, but in many cases, it's still a very fragmented industry. And this problem is actually a benefit to our business. We can solve this. And where we've been deploying this model, we've been solving this for about a decade now. So just to get right into it, what SWIM is standards of policy that enable standards of practice. And it really inspires, I mean, this loop here, it's drawn here for a reason. So this is a continuous improvement loop that we think about. And we start with one common practice, which is that which is measured can be improved. That which is measured can be improved. We have some measuring of salt going on, but I have to say as an industry, we're way behind the curve compared to other industries. And it's very interesting that Ted spoke to it earlier. We are all allowed to, in a fairly unregulated way, we're allowed to apply copiously a pollutant, right? So it's an allowable use pollutant that we're really not told how much we're even limited to put down, right? And so that's what makes this a bit fragmented is we have some that are being uberly responsible and others that you just see the pictures like we just saw from Ted and from Dan. So, but with that data, what do we do with that data? And that's the point. And I think I met with Chris and his team earlier this morning. Holy smokes, they were measuring everything, right? And so now the trick is, what do you do with that, right? And that's where the continuous improvement loop comes into play. So if anybody that's in Moultonborough, anybody residents of Moultonborough here, every tax dollar that you're paying is worth it. These guys are not wasting your money. They're trying to save it, right? And so, and that's what this problem enables, though, is just further incentivizing us to reduce the use of this material, right? But we're also going to reduce time and frequency and lapse of salt application being made. And so that data allows us to then make certain decisions that Chris talked about earlier. It's not just about the air temperature, it's the surface temperature, particularly during these shoulder seasons or shoulder months. So you could have 30 degrees air, sun's out. Guess how much that asphalt, what the temperature of that asphalt is? Anybody have any idea? Middle of the day? So it could be snowing, it could be 30 degrees. Sun was just out though, could be 40 degrees on the asphalt. Sometimes it's 10, 15 degrees warmer. Chris may be saying like, we don't need salt today. Somebody else is saying like, why aren't they applying salt? So sometimes Chris is getting in trouble for not applying the salt, but they're making decisions. Is it fair for me to say that? Yeah. So, and then where we come into play too is really the verification of that, right? So again, that which is being measured is also being verified. So calibration, Ted spoke to it earlier. Here's what we find in our work. We've been reducing by at least 50% anywhere we deploy these standards. It's like shooting fish in a barrel is what I always say. Because we start with the measuring. You can immediately start to see, like if you're a contractor with a fleet of 10, 15, 50 trucks, you could have the same exact spreader set at the same exact gate. And a lot of times we call that calibrated because we're all the same gate setting. it is not putting out the same amount of salt. I guarantee it. Anybody disagree with me? All right. So, wasn't challenging, but so my point though is that's the start of this, right? And I think that's sometimes where we think that's where we end with this is like, no, we're all calibrated, we're all at the same standard. We're not, right? And so that's when the measuring, there's technology out there to do this, there's ways to automate. So like poor Chris and his team, man, you have no idea how much work it takes to show you the data that they're showing you. There's a lot of manual entry stuff, right? So we need everybody to help him automate that so that they can concentrate on what's going on the roads. So what we certify though is all of these practices are being practiced, right? So it's a trust verify system. So we start with measuring, that's measuring outputs, that's measuring level of service. Because a lot of times what you'll see is in a fleet of vehicles, we're all, well, let me ask both, Chris, I'll ask you first. Would you say in general, on all of your asphalt roads, are we supposed to be achieving the same level of service?
Yes.
Yeah. So, but what you'll find in a fleet of vehicles, this is a very natural thing that happens is, we'll achieve the same level of service, but one vehicle may actually put down double than the other. We have to be able to see that first, right? And in a lot of cases, most fleets can't see that. So that's something that we're gonna help enable in really this new initiative. For contractors, same thing. I mean, we'd love to say that there's a different level of service, but our customers really aren't allowing us to back off on the level of service. Is that fair as a contractor to say? So what would you say as a contractor, the level of service requirement is that you're hearing from your customer?
Blacktop.
What's that?
Blacktop.
Blacktop. Anybody got another one?
Zero tolerance.
Zero tolerance. Love that one. What the hell does that mean, right? Zero tolerance, right? So, but what they're asking for is, everybody remember the Dunkin' Donuts commercial where they're like, the plow drivers are waiting for the flakes to come down? That's sort of what we're being told to achieve though is, I had a customer once, it was a hospital with a helipad, and the specification, this is in Chevy Chase, Maryland, the specification said, must look like it never snowed. How is that achievable, right? Except that we're just blasting it with stuff, right? We're just so we're not even plowing at that point. We're just applying. And so for anybody that's the customer, I'm not trying to call you out necessarily, it's just that that's what we're being told to do. So a lot of times the folks that are applying the salt are being told that they're the problem. It's like, well, we're all the end user though. Ted spoke to this earlier. We're all the ones that want the Amazon Prime package the next day. So it really becomes a business continuity issue that we're actually sort of enabling, right? And so we have to sort of think about it in terms of level of service somewhere in this has to be called out. The reality though is I don't think that those expectations are gonna go down, right? And so therefore, we have to practice in a way that still allows us to provide a level of service that uses less salt. And that's a scary thing to think about as the people that are doing the work, because we've never really been asked to do that before. So there's this fine balance between how we've been doing it and how it can be done. And so I come here with confidence because we've been slinging at this thing for the last decade, and we've actually figured out how to do it, right? But it takes some confidence, right? And it takes some courage. So just to boil it down, these are the standards of practice or policy, measuring outputs, measuring level of service, calibration. Ted spoke to it earlier. We see this all day long. When we do this right, it's 25% right off the rip. Preventing the bond. You spoke to it earlier. Our roads are like a stick frying pan. When you don't do something proactively with it, what does that cleanup process look like? It's soap, scrub, more scrub. For us, the soap is salt, and the scrub is the scrape of the plow, right? So breaking the bond usually takes somewhere between 4 to 10 times more effort and material to break that bond rather than to actually prevent it to begin with. It's the lines in the road that you start to see some doing, but we need to be doing that in parking lots. We need to be doing that on sidewalks. As a homeowner, you're able to do that as well. The most efficient way to do that is with brine, but brine's scary because brine's different. And the first thing that our psyche thinks about is like, it looks like water, therefore it's gonna freeze. It's not water though, it's salt water, right? And so these are all these things that we have to change our mindsets on. We get into then, what we help to enable then is like, as long as we have good data, we can then start to analyze that and improve from there, right? And again, for poor Chris, I'm dying to help them automate it because they're just spending too much time on it. And it's not necessarily getting them the end result that they need because it just takes too much effort. So this is what the process looks like, but the main point is this is, we're here. We always call the first year season 0. We're here. We don't know anything yet, essentially. But like our Lake George example, we're 10 years into it. Now, there's a lot of results going on, but boy, it took about 5 years to finally get to where we could get to an improvement level, right? And an optimization level. I think we can do that faster here. The buy-in is already way ahead of where we started years ago in that initiative. And so that's where I feel, quite a bit more optimistic about this. But there's a lot that goes into this, right? And a lot of it requires intervention. A lot of it requires reinvesting. Like we do see savings, cost savings. We have to be able to then take those savings and reinvest them. Don't change the budget. Don't lower the budget. We've been fighting that for years too, right? So, to keep it simple, for contractors, is anybody in this room as a contractor, if you're willing to share, does anybody have a contract that's something other than a seasonal or performance-based contract? Per inch, per application, per plow, any of those? Yes? Okay. Yeah, so like when we work on that at a contractor or a private property level, no more of that, right? It's all performance based. And so for anybody that wants to talk to me further about that at a contractor level, happy to show you how that works. We've got a couple customers of ours that I'll show you the results of that though. Site weather stations, these are RWIS technology usually, so we want to see those on the roads. We're measuring not only level of service, and those are pictures, that's both decision making, documentation, verification, but we're looking at air temperature, we're looking at surface temperature, as Chris was saying earlier, and we're applying that then back to performance so that we can even show operators and give them more confidence that, hey look, this truck that put down half achieved the same level of service that you did, so it's okay, we can dial your truck down next time. We good? But sometimes you need the picture to give the confidence. Preventing the bond, I talked about that a lot already, but this right here, calibration, and this right here, usually we already see 50% right there. So, but a lot of times operations are scared of this because it seems like it's another operation. It's another frequency. In contracts, how do we explain that and sell that to our customers, right? And that's why the performance-based contracts are so much more important because it's not about an amount anymore. It's about a level of service being achieved. So the customer should not care about how long it takes, how often it takes, or how much it takes, right, as far as quantity. They should just care about that level of service. So we have to sell it that way in the future. And then really the automation, the optimization is really, I think, in Chris's operation in particular, that's where the opportunity is, right? That's where we sometimes see another 50%. So that's why years ago we were shooting for 50%, but 50% to me is actually getting a little lazy now in a way, right? So Chris has got some numbers that are pretty impressive. I'm going to challenge Chris. We'll do another 50%. Okay, benefits. Hopefully they speak for themselves, but let me just speak to them realistically. In Lake George, where Eric and I first started, this was back at least 5 years ago. They're even greater than this now, but their salt savings has been at least 50%. We've seen it go up to about 75% since they incorporated direct liquid application routes They don't do all of them, but on the flats, they're barely using any granular salt at all anymore. So it's all direct liquid application brine. Sometimes it's enhanced with like a mag product, magnesium chloride product, to lower the effective freeze point down below that 15, down to more like 5. We don't have to really worry about anything below 5 much anymore. This year got a little bit extreme, but it wasn't the whole winter, right? So we're still safe in that zone. And then the cost savings, just in the material costs and the savings of the frequencies, that's been at least about a 25% savings now. And we're seeing that consistently. That's the other point, is sustaining these results. Because New York's a little different than here. New York has all elected highway supervisors. You're fortunate here in that you're more or less appointed or employed, right? So that's actually a benefit that you have that from a political view that other organizations don't have. We work with a grocery store chain, Wegmans. Has anybody heard of Wegmans? But this is from several years ago. So this slide's important because this is not my slide, this is their slide. And they started looking at it from, I thought it was interesting, like what's it cost per parking space? They look at it at a parking space point of view. So every parking space, if anybody's ever shopped at a Wegmans, this place is freaking crazy, man. And it's like always full, and the people are driving there crazy, and they're just ramped up about being there. So every space is important for them to have cleared and safe. So, but we're actually working on now a portfolio-wide implementation of SWIM. It's taken us about 10 years to get there. We went from 5 stores, we're at 50 stores this year, plus distribution centers, and we're gonna add pretty much everything. We're all in the upstate zone, if you will, and now we're gonna work from Pennsylvania down to North Carolina, believe it or not. And North Carolina is actually getting more snow than they've ever gotten, which is ironic, right? So that portfolio-wide savings, we've got to sort of recalculate this, but it's well over $1 million, so that talks, right? And their slip and falls went down. Slip and falls went down. Less salt, slip and falls went down. So it's all about methods, right? They started, and then they realized, oh, wait a minute, this is good for the environment too, right? Yeah. Thank God, finally they saw that. But so they incorporated this in even energy costs. Like, so there's actually 1 ton of salt, they actually equated to a value of energy, which I thought was very interesting, right? And then there's even additional benefits to energy. So these are the kinds of things for those, some of you that have, more sophisticated corporate clients, these are the kind of things that they think about at a sustainability level. They don't think about it as water as much as they do as energy. And so they try to equate that for their own C-suite executives to understand how to sell this to them. We work with the University of Rochester in Western New York, and I'm proud to say we started working with them right in this range. So they used to be off the charts, right? So this is their slip and falls. But the reason I'm showing this, and again, this is not my slide, this is their slide that they share with me, but this is where we are now, implementing SWIM, right? Implementing these standards. So this is, again, I'm sharing this because it's for confidence that less salt doesn't need to mean that we're actually putting ourselves more at risk. If anything, we're managing our risk, and that's really what sustainability is about, is risk management. That's what I've always been taught it, right? So this is about risk management, right? We're the first responders of the first responders. We're the folks that are expected to be out there to keep everything clear for everyone else, including the first responders, right? So we think, so salt's a tool though. Salt's a tool, but it's not the only tool anymore. So there's other ways to achieve black, right? Other ways to achieve, I would tell you, I'd fight zero tolerance all day long. It's not a real thing, right? Hospitals will tell you that's something though, and so we can't achieve zero tolerance, but what we can achieve is bare pavement recovery by a certain amount of time after accumulation ends. So that's the way that we should be selling that. Bare pavement recovery. So like, what's your bare pavement recovery expectation after the accumulation stops? Is it 1 hour? Is it 2 hours? Well, we need it like immediately. Okay. There's a cost to that though, right? It should mean more salt though. It should mean more mechanical methods. right? And the client should be paying for that. The reason that we're afraid to say that is because we've got competition that doesn't know about this, and then they're gonna lowball us, right? So that's why we gotta all start to get religion on this as a community of contractors and clients, quite frankly. So so what does this mean for the water? This is the one that I'm probably most proud of, because I think a lot of this was happening while Eric actually was leading the Lake George Association at the time, but I don't think we expected these kind of results this soon. We were told it might actually be, as Ted said, it took us decades to get here. It may take us more decades to get out of here. So this is one of the major streams that feed directly into Lake George, the Hagebrook, which is sort of northern end of Lake George, northwestern end of Lake George. And then again, these aren't my slides, but the scientists are saying the data suggests in some of the areas where we're measuring, where there's been hot spots in that lake, the data suggests that we are actually on a downward trend. Is it still 3 times higher than it was in the 80s? Yes. So like to Ted's slide, that 3 times is happening everywhere. Anywhere the salt's being applied, that same 3 times seems consistent. Any chart I've seen we do this from as far north and east as Portland, and as far west as Boulder, Colorado. We see the same numbers everywhere. So, but we've not seen a lot of these numbers. So Lake George really has become the epicenter of this, and also the proof case of this. And so this is where the confidence lies, and we can actually start to achieve results. The more of us that are doing this simultaneously, consistently, the faster we'll start to see those results, is what I get out of that. So I'm not a water quality scientist, but the charts seem to make sense, right? So here's my call to action, and really the big call to action is really just shifting our mindsets a bit, right? So we're all afraid of change. I get that. We're not necessarily changing, we're just kind of enhancing the way that we do it now, is the way I'd like to sell it. So we have to first make sure that everyone understands. So I believe every single person that's in our organizations, whether you're municipal or private contractor, it's important that everybody understands this is a pollutant. Just because we're allowed to use it doesn't mean it's not bad, right? And I'm still amazed at how many salt truck drivers that I meet and work with don't actually know that. So that's our responsibility as the business owners or the leaders of the organizations, to make sure people understand that. Because I found just that message alone just makes people maybe want to put a little less down. Contracts, we talked about this before, they should be based on performance and level of preparedness. So we're fire departments, right? Our success should not be based on number of fires. Our success is based on our level of preparedness. So, because we have some years here where it doesn't snow, almost, or barely, and then we had this year. But we're still expected to achieve the same level of service no matter what. So we should be paid for that. We should be paid for that. Or we should actually be funded like that, right? Because we fund fire departments that way. But fire departments are different too. Some are volunteers, some are hybrid, some are 2 shifts, guys playing cards, waiting to slide down a pole, right? So like, we have to decide at what level of service do we want our parking lots to be serviced as well. And then decisions based on data. No more winging it, because we do a lot of winging it. And you know, the slides that Dad showed earlier, it's a reality. We are still the wild, wild west when it comes to this salt slinging industry of who we are, right? And so that's where the opportunity in this region in particular, it's going to change here, right? And then I think just the training alone, again, I come from a landscape contractor's background. Is there anybody in this room that's a contractor that actually does more snow than landscape? Anybody here? Yeah, because I know a lot of them that do. There's a lot of landscape contractors that, when you really look at the books, so we work also as business sustainability advisors, and when you look at the books, if you really want to look at where your profit's coming from in particular, a lot of it's coming from the snow, yet we still treat it as sort of like a sideshow because we're landscapers, right? But we're the snow industry. We are the salt application industry. And so therefore, we have a responsibility to be doing this not as a sideshow, but as a main focus. It's a separate business, right? And I know I've seen some of the names in the room. I think you do take it seriously. We've got to get that message made clear to everyone, though. So that's what I have for you. Thanks for having me, and I'm really excited to get started here.
And snow removal. Setting the expectations for the residents and maybe helping the contractors. Is there any kind of a template that you've had success with for setting those expectations that would be helpful for the contractor?
Yeah.
Or does DES or snow?
Yeah, we actually have what's called the swim contract. That's what we use even in that Wegmans example. So it's a form of a seasonal variance contract, and so it both specifies the standards of policy and practice that should be in play, but then it also, a lot of times it comes down to the money, right? What's it gonna cost? And so part of how we explain it at the property owner client level is, think about it this way, and I'm curious if any contractor thinks differently on this. The actual plowing and ice management is really only about 30% of the service. And so like Dan's video even just showed a small example of, you have no idea what is going on pre-season, pre-storm, post-storm, post-season, to be able to provide that 25 times a year plowing and putting some salt down. It's a major infrastructure, staffing. Like, can you imagine having a full-time staff and then it doesn't snow? What are you gonna do with these folks, right? How am I gonna keep them on staff? And so it's all these things that our contract tries to address that with the customer to say, there is a base cost for us providing the service, whether it snows or not, right? And then the only reason that price will change is because if there's an extreme season, extremely low season, let's say, okay, we could afford to give some of that money back. But if it's an extreme high season, we need the same level of protection. And so it's sort of a sliding scale negotiation that then happens. So it take a while to explain the whole thing, and a little bit of it's proprietary, honestly. But the whole point of it, though, is how do you make it a more equitable agreement between the contractor and the client? Because that's usually where a lot of the problem happens, even with the salt application, is if I've got to be as cheap as possible. Because here's a reality for the property owners and the clients. For a majority of these storms that we get are like, let's say 1, 2, 3 inches. It's way cheaper for me as a contractor to burn it off with salt than to send a bunch of plow trucks out. Because you won't pay for the preparedness. So you leave me no choice, because I also have to make a living, right? And so you're leaving me no choice but to make it as efficient as possible, and that's the most efficient way to do it sometimes. So these big storms are actually, from my experience, they're easier. It's all these frequent little storms that it's really hard for me to dispatch and get enough people on the ground quick enough to meet your level of service. So I'm just gonna start slinging salt, right? And then in a lot of ways, there's a lot of turnover in this industry. And so a lot of times the person that's slinging the salt on your property may have just gotten hired last week and has never done this before. And they're doing it at 2 o'clock in the morning. And it's like, buttons here, turn it on here. And that's the thing that's pretty much what the training is sometimes, right? Because we're not actually being enabled to have training and hire people before the season, all that, because nobody wants to pay for it.
Relative to contracts, there are some municipalities around the country who have developed some model contractor sort of relationships related to reducing their salt use. So there's a county out in Wisconsin that put together, it was in Minnesota, anyway, somebody out there put together a contract so that when they were doing their because they hire contractors to do some of their snow removal like Moultonborough does. And so they developed some model contracts. So there are some models around about that. But in terms of homeowners, there's been practically no outreach to homeowners, and except in a few areas where people have taken this really on and started to do some work around that. I think that's where you're building on the Smart Smart Lakes program that's already in existence, building on some of that deals directly with homeowners. I think that you have a real unique opportunity here in the Lakes region to do some of that kind of outreach.
Yeah. So we're talking about private contractors, and one thing that has struck me since coming from Lake George, where there's a lot of public land and a lot of protected property, here there's so much of it that's private, nothing wrong with that, but 90% of the shorefront and much of the watershed is in private ownership, with private roads, miles, I don't know, hundreds, maybe thousands of miles of private roads. And to your point, Ted, reaching those private property owners, those homeowners that want those Amazon Prime packages, the next day, blizzard or no blizzard. That's a big part of our challenge as an alliance, and that's why I said on the front end, it's going to take a lake, it's going to take a village, it's going to take everybody participating in this. And we have the A-team up here, but unless we have those property owners dialed into this and realizing the reality here of what it's going to take, we're scratching the surface. We're not going to make a dent on the problem. So it's a statement, but it's a question: how do we overcome that reality in a resource that's rather unique? Maybe not in New Hampshire, but compared to Lake George, it's a horse of a different color. So I don't know who wants to field that, but I'm all ears. We're all ears.
Thank you.
Well, I can start. I'll start, because I always got something to say. I'm familiar with outreach efforts across all kinds of environmental issues from my whole career. And I will just tell you that the only thing that ever works is for individuals to feel a sense of place and understand how this sense of place, what they do matters. And until you have that, I think that for those of us, there are a lot of old, old families that have been on the lake for a long, long time. And those people have an understanding of the sense of stewardship around the lake, generally speaking, more than a lot of the folks who come in here because they like to go fast in a boat. This is a place you can go fast in a boat. And so there's some of that kind of getting at that audience requires you to have some unique perspectives, some unique alliances to try to get with those kinds of folks because they have a different set of concerns. So I think that ultimately, this all comes down to how every single one of us feels about what it is we're doing. And once people feel that way, they start voting that way. And that's how you get, better equipment for Chris. And that's how those kinds of things happen, is because people then understand what that means on their particular property. But it's that sense of place. I don't think that there's anybody who's ever figured out a shortcut to that.
That sounds good. It does. I like the sound of it, but I want to hear Dan's perspective on this.
So I think anyone, this is my 26th year of summer business. I'm going into my 26th year, and I can tell you that if you pick a lakefront roadway, whatever town we're in, it doesn't even matter if it's Moultonborough, Meredith, St. Arbor, could be anyone. I think what we have to realize that I would say in the last 25 years that you have taken roads that quite possibly 25 years ago never saw salt. The driveways never saw salt. Now there's more driveways than there ever was. Who knows what that number is, 25%, you know, again, lots that were never, ever, no one would ever think they would be built on. You know, the forefathers of site work in the Lakes region never would have imagined trying to get a backhoe, not even an excavator with an Encon bucket to do all with this stuff, and now it's commonplace. We're developing the worst property, and the runoff itself is insane, and now we are just, I feel that we're allowing customers to call the shots. And I don't want to say that it is wealthy people coming out of cities here buying second, third homes. However,
You can.
so, you know, I would say that a contractor, probably with help of someone like Phill, can learn ways to make the same amount of money, if not more, have way more respect from the homeowner, that they're the professional, they're the ones that are prepared, they have the equipment, they're Green Snow Pro certified, all that stuff. Let me do my job. Let me have that ability to have the service based, let me do my job, you'll be able to get out. If you really have to get out at a specific time, we can make special, arrangements to do that. If you're getting, something delivered, let's talk about that. So these are all details that you may or may not always get paid for, but it's all those little things that I think over time will add up exponentially. It's a lot, and again, it's a lot. It's to have anywhere from 15 to 25 events that you've got to worry about all these little details. It's to plow snow, to move snow out of the way so we can move faster. Bigger, better, faster. That's what it is. Bigger, better, faster. Let's just get the snow out of the way so I can go. I think if we just take it down a notch, educate and learn as a community, the bidding process, the cost of what contractors should be making on this, I think it can be a more profitable situation. There's less salt. I mean, I'm in the business of selling it, but I'm fine with selling less. If the big picture, the greater picture is we've got lakes and streams that are here forever. I mean, that's why these people are here. As contractors, we should be doing better, all of us, on my end, there should be more education to a new contractor who just showed up with his new truck and his spreader and knows nothing. It happens all the time. And so me capturing that person, or whoever's in a loader, loading them, it starts there on my end. And as I said earlier, the contractors that we deal with, the contractors that are really doing the work, the high end, the best work out there, they're doing a phenomenal job, and they'll continue to do that. And if they're led the right way and they're educated the right way, it will move in the right direction.
That was an awesome answer. Thank you, Dan.
So I got a question for you guys, to build on what Dan was just saying, and I guess this would probably be to build on a question that, on what Dan was just saying, it'd probably be directed at Mr. Diers there. So from a contractor's perspective, right, we wanna try to do better. Obviously, we're gonna compete cost competitiveness with other contractors. So say someone like ourselves wanna go out and be certified in the Green Pro and try to reduce the salt use through application or different processes, mechanical, what have you. Is there a way to let the people on these hot homes, difficult homes near the lakes, take some of the burden so that they don't shop our price to a cheaper customer, to a cheaper contractor that didn't take any training and is just gonna dump a few extra pounds of salt down and cut our number because he didn't do the training, he's not gonna spend the money on the equipment. Is there something that could be, I don't know, I don't wanna call it a law because we don't wanna do that, but something to make them bear some of the burden instead of putting it all on the contractor that's trying to make a buck and then he's gonna compete with everyone.
Excellent question.
So I'll be happy to dance around that question quite a bit here. So how do you get people to change their behavior, right? Right, you can have a carrot or a stick. You got a choice, you can have a carrot or a stick. And so you can have regulation, which will, either you can regulate you,
Yep.
I don't wanna regulate you. Or I can regulate the homeowner, or I can regulate the municipality. Or I can regulate the product, right? There's lots of ways to do regulation. Regulation has a place in all of that in some manner. I think the better approach would be the carrot approach, would be have some sort of set of incentives. What I'd really like to do is I'd really like to have a big pot of money. I'd really like to have a big pot of money that I could give you for doing the right thing, so that I could reduce your costs for doing the right thing. Because I'd like to be able to have you come to me and say, look, I wanna do ABL on all my trucks, and I'm gonna do all this big accountability stuff. I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna do continuous process improvement, but I need the equipment to be able to do it. Can you give me can you give me a zero interest loan, or can you give me a grant that'll offset those costs? I'd love for you to ask me for that, and I'd love to be able to say yes. Can we have a regional brine distribution center that can reduce our costs dramatically? Can we have equipment purchasing that we can get after? Is there other kinds of things like that that we could be able to do as a community or as individual contractors? They're doing this, they have a fund now out in, I think it's out in Ohio, where they've done this through their Small Business Administration, and they've done some subsidized sort of funding for this very purpose. And so you get at it from that perspective. That, I think, is honestly, and there was a bill this year that would have done that. It's probably gonna die because, but that's legislation, that's the sausage making. That's you all getting active in, if you want policy to change, I will do whatever policy tells me to do. You get the policy, I'll enact the policy, whether you like it or not. If there's a law, I'm gonna follow up on it, because that's my job. So if you don't like the policy, what you're talking about is policy changes, then you have to be active in the policy making arena, and that's the bottom line. Did I dance around that okay?
I think there's a lot more to it than that, because you're a business, right? And you're competing with other businesses. And, what Ted's talking about is gonna take a long time. I mean, with all due respect, Ted, and I know I don't have a mic, but, you can hear me? Oh, good. I don't know if Bill can, but in any case, I would say that it goes back to what a lot of you have said, and Dan has said very well, about the homeowner, the property owner. How do we reach them and make the case to them that this is a better way to go, and to actually direct them to you, for instance? And here is a contractor, we can't be as an NGO, as a nonprofit, in the business of promoting one business over another. It's just, we're gonna have targets on our back, right? But if we can direct people toward businesses that are certified, that are doing the right thing on behalf of the resource, and you know what? They're going to protect the property value of your home at the same time. Money talks, I'm sorry, incentives work, but property value matters here more than Lake George. I mean, property values here are off the charts from what I've seen. And if you guys are in the business of protecting property value, I think that's the way to make your case and to be cost competitive with, other players in this game.
But
it's going to raise the bar, it's going to raise the bar for everybody who's participating.
There are people like Dan. There are people, I know some folks out in Rye. There's some folks down in Merrimack area that have made a career out of differentiating themselves by being, green applicators. That they have a conscience. They talk about your drinking water well. They talk about the metal sills on your front door rotting out. Those guys have made really good careers out of differentiating themselves by being good players. And I think Phill could probably talk more about other people around the country who've done the same thing. But you don't get to control your competitor. All you get to control is what you do.
I would just want to add to that the opportunity this problem presents for you as a contractor, you're a contractor, correct? Yeah. Is we're all kind of tribal beings here, right? So we all want to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. In this case, it's the differentiation. So like I'm actually excited about how the industry differentiates itself. Some of you are going to be early adopters, like you're innovators, you're early adopters. Some of you are going to be laggards, like you're going to just wait until the last minute. It's like, I guess I'm the last guy standing here on this, I better do it. That's how all these things change over time, right? And some of what I want to show you there is like some of our clients, those 5 stores that we started with and now it's 50 stores, they don't bid it out. They don't pay the lowest price. It's like, because we've been able to sell the total cost of doing it the wrong way, right? Because there's more to this than just the plowing and the salting, right? And so all it takes is one incident or one way that I can't access property or whatever. And so it's a lot of this is about sales, quite frankly. It's like, how do we sell this? That is different than the way it's being, sort of sold now. So, so it's really just kind of up to you. Like, you want to be on the early end of this, which sometimes is harder, quite frankly, and sometimes takes a little bit more investment up front, frankly, right? It's like the big televisions we used to buy, they were thousands of dollars, now they're $100. Some of us bought it when they were thousands, but we all still seem to be doing good with this, right? So that would be my challenge, and that's part of where we come into play is let us help you do that, because we've got some experience with that.
Forgive my naivete here. I'm new to a winter climate like New Hampshire. And maybe, Chris, you could speak to this, but to what extent does the town have any control, I don't want to say control, but at least interaction with private contractors? Is there a way to unify and organize the system? And what I'm leading to is, if so, can the town in some way incentivize or make it more favorable for contractors who do take on sort of this best practice, minimize environmental impact attitude? Is this just a pie in the sky thinking?
So I did touch on that earlier, the controls that we have over the contractors. We can have control of the contractors that are doing the activities and plowing the roads that we hire them for. We cannot, as a community, control the contractors for their private endeavors overall. There may be some incentives from, Ted touched on it earlier, and from other avenues, but as a community, we can't put that tax, I'm gonna call it, on those contractors to do their jobs outside of what we have, what they're doing for us, for our road networks.
So I'm actually pretty impressed to see how many contractors are in this room tonight, to be honest with you. So I'd like to say that we're actually taking steps right now that I haven't seen in quite a while. And really, I think it comes down to, I'll be waiting for the pot of money that you get approved for us, or the tax breaks at the town somehow, and I'll be waiting for that for a long time. I think it's starting already now. I think really we need kind of a contractor alliance, because there's plenty of work to go around here. And so the more contractors that are providing this service, that are providing it, like you said, the early adopters, and eventually someone's gonna lag on at the end. But if we can all identify it, early on together, private residents are gonna realize that everyone has that option, and now it just comes down to, our communication and other differentiators. If we all align on that level of service and how that's gonna be given and the benefit of it and stuff like that. And the reality is, like we talked about, we're in 90%, private market around here. So, the sales pitch about, the auto door at the commercial, front giving out, and the replacement costs, and, the private homeowners, that's a much harder sell, and that's our market, right? So it really comes down to contractors more so banding together as best as we can. And again, I would think like, oh, we all got to show up at this kind of event. I'm thrilled to see how many people are here. So we're taking steps in the right direction with that, identifying the needs for this, kind of all banding together to offer this new level of service and care for the environment and stuff like that. And I think, you know, the private residents out there that are going to be taking this stuff on are going to realize, well, if I go to this guy or that guy or that guy, they're all kind of pitching the same concept. Like this is the way forward. So I think it's going to be that, and yeah, there's going to be people that don't adopt this, like you said, but eventually the masses will, and we're going to be moving in the right direction.
Fantastic. Couldn't agree more. But I would only say to that, John, and that's John, right?
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to talk too much, but it's all so stimulating, I have to say, that it is because 90% of that shorefront, that ring of impact, that is harming this resource. And you said it, John, when we met, that as goes this lake, so goes your business, right? And that's true of all the contractors in this room. You're not gonna have people flocking, whether it's from Boston or other places to build, whether it's a second home or a primary residence, they're not gonna come here if they think this lake is in decline, if they think their water quality is gonna be impaired. All of these headaches, all of these net negatives. So this idea of the contractors aligning, it doesn't mean you have to be, you know, it's not a social experiment or a plot. It's just getting real about what is the ultimate value of this place. And it's the natural character, it's the clean water, it's why people come here, it's why they're spending millions. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it pales, it makes Lake George pale in comparison. But we gotta do something about it. And if we don't do it on the private property, and that means starting with the homeowners, but with the people that service those property owners, those homeowners, we're gonna lose the lake. It's just a question of when, not whether. So, thank you. Thank you all.
I think it was Ted, you had a slide up there that said where the salt was coming from. And one was, it was 50% from parking lots.
So that was a slide from the southern part of the state, the most developed part of the state. But it generally holds true in any really urbanized or suburbanized area. But that just letting you know where that slide came from.
Okay. The question though is the biggest part there you showed was parking lots.
Right.
Is that because there's more parking lots, or because those are serviced by contractors instead of municipalities, or why was?
Yeah, well, that data came from Salem. So Salem, New Hampshire. So picture Salem, New Hampshire, it looks a little different than the way property is developed. It's developed around Winnipesaukee, but there are certain areas in which that is true. I would say that probably if we were to do a mass balance, that the way that was developed was by using a mass balance, trying to figure out how you allocate the chloride molecules that we measure in the water to where it's coming from, knowing a few of those on the like how much DOT is putting and how much the communities are putting and that sort of thing. You could do that. We could do that here. My guess is that you'd find probably that those roads that are closer have a little bit more impact than they do down there, simply because there aren't as many big parking lots. But I think that you would find that you also have a lot more steep terrain. I did some work with Sunapee. If you've ever been to Sunapee, the roads come like directly up. They go directly down, into the lake. And so trying to keep snow and ice off of those things was brutal. And so they had to use a salt sand mix because it was mostly gravel. They were using lots of salt on uncovered piles, but yes. So yeah, I think, I don't know what that mix looks like here, but you can sort of extrapolate that.
Okay, thank you.
Max Hohen from the Moultonborough Conservation Commission, and some of you, I know Chris was asking, what did you cut yourself this morning? So this is just a little bit of too much fun in the sun that we enjoy here in the Lakes region. So Anyway, on the behalf of the Moultonborough Conservation Commission, wanted to thank everyone, residents and contractors alike. I know that we had asked for a show of hands of residents before, but how many contractors are here? I'd like to see that. That's great. And is there a show of hands of how many are snow, green pro snow? Is there? Wow, that's great. So thank you all for being here. Your presence shows your commitment to the community and the protection of our treasured natural resource. I'm really encouraged with also some of the innovative ideas like what John was talking about with the Alliance somehow, start talking. Also us as a commission, we can help outreach and try to spread the word that, hey, residents, you should really be talking to these certified contractors. So we'd be glad to, help with that, if that helps push this idea on further. We are also especially grateful to the Lake Winnipesaukee Alliance for your dedication and your efforts in organizing this fantastic lineup of super speakers, very competent, high caliber speakers. Your hard work has made this evening possible and very meaningful. A heartfelt thank you to our outstanding speakers. We appreciate your time and sharing your knowledge with us. Your expertise and passion inspires us to take action to reduce chloride usage on our properties and our commercial enterprises. We appreciate your valuable contribution to tonight's program. And then looking ahead, stay tuned. I think we're going to be looking at some more of this kind of collaboration. On how we can together work and collaborate to protect our valued natural resource here in the Lakes region. Thank you.